If you were forced to witness an act of cruelty, would you have the courage to step in? Prepare yourself for a deeply moving story of struggle, redemption, and the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. What you're about to hear may break your heart before it puts it back together, illuminating the darkness that exists in our world and the light that can overcome it. In the quiet suburbs of Portland, Oregon, where tree-lined streets give way to local parks and coffee shops, a small beige house stood at the end of Maple Drive. It was unremarkable in every way, except for what happened within its walls. Inside lived Mark Donovan, a 28-year-old social media content creator desperate for fame, willing to cross any line for views and subscribers. The true heart of our story, however, belongs to a small golden retriever puppy, just 8 weeks old, with fur the color of autumn sunshine and eyes that reflected an innocent soul. The puppy, later named Hope, had been purchased from a local breeder not as a pet, but as a prop for Mark's increasingly disturbing content. Those eyes that should have known only love instead witnessed the darkest side of humanity. Just 2 blocks away lived Elijah Washington, a 34-year-old former Marine-turned-high school counselor who believed in the fundamental goodness of people despite having seen combat overseas. With dark, kind eyes and strong hands that now helped troubled teens find their way. Elijah lived alone since returning from his 3rd tour, finding peace in his morning runs and weekend volunteer work at the local animal shelter. The neighborhood itself was a tight-knit community, where people generally kept to themselves while still watching out for one another. Block parties in summer, holiday decorations in winter, and a shared understanding that neighbors were extended family. No one suspected that behind one of those familiar doors, a nightmare was unfolding for a creature who couldn't speak for himself. On social media, Mark Donovan had tried everything to stand out: pranks, challenges, reaction videos, but nothing gave him the viewership he craved. His follower count stagnated at a few hundred, mostly friends and family who supported him out of obligation. The algorithms ignored him, and the fame he desperately sought remained elusive, feeding a growing resentment that darkened his thoughts and intentions. The golden retriever puppy had come into Mark's possession just 3 days earlier, purchased with the last of his savings after seeing how animal videos consistently went viral. But rather than showcasing the puppy's adorable antics, Mark's disturbed mind had conceived a different angle, one that played on outrage, shock, and the internet's dark fascination with controversy and cruelty. That Tuesday morning dawned bright and clear, with birdsong filtering through tree branches and neighbors heading to work. Inside Mark's house, the puppy cowered in a small wire crate in the corner of the living room, without proper bedding, food just out of reach. His golden fur was already dulled from stress and neglect, his trusting nature beginning to give way to fear whenever human footsteps approached. Meanwhile, Elijah began his day as he always did: a 5-mile run through the neighborhood, shower, breakfast, and then off to Portland East High School, where troubled teens found in him not just a counselor, but an advocate who truly understood trauma. That morning, something compelled him to take a different route home, one that would lead him past the beige house on Maple Drive at precisely the wrong or right moment. Mark had set up his filming equipment with calculated precision: ring lights to illuminate his subject, multiple camera angles to capture every reaction, and his smartphone on a tripod for the close-ups that would generate the most visceral responses. He had researched which content would trigger algorithms and outrage alike, studied other creators who had gained infamy through controversial acts, and convinced himself that negative attention was still attention, still a path to the recognition he craved. The puppy whimpered in the crate, hungry and frightened, his small body trembling as Mark lifted him roughly by the scruff. "This is going to make us famous," he whispered to the camera, not to the living being in his hands. The puppy's eyes, still trusting despite everything, looked up at the human who should have been his protector, unaware that their interaction was about to become part of a disturbing online trend where creators feigned abuse for views, only to rescue the animals afterward. Outside, Elijah jogged past the house, his breath steady, mind cleared by exercise and fresh air. He would have continued on if not for the open window and the sound that stopped him cold: a puppy's cry of pain, followed by a man's voice saying, "That's it! Look scared! This'll get us 1 million views for sure." The words and their implication froze Elijah mid-stride, his body tensing as combat instincts from years past surged through his system. Through the partially open blinds, Elijah could see just enough. The glint of camera equipment, a man's back, and a small golden puppy being held aloft by the scruff, trembling. Another cry cut through the morning air as Mark pretended to raise his hand threateningly while narrating to his audience. That single moment of witnessing cruelty for entertainment transformed something in Elijah, igniting a righteous fury he hadn't felt since protecting civilians in war zones half a world away. What happened next would change not only the lives of everyone involved, but would ripple outward through social media, traditional news outlets, and eventually into the halls of justice. Elijah Washington, who had been trained to assess threats and act decisively, made a split-second decision that would ultimately save one life and redirect another. The clock on Elijah's watch read 7:43 a.m. as he stepped off the sidewalk and approached the beige house, his heart pounding with adrenaline and determination. The front door wasn't fully closed. Mark had been expecting a package delivery and had left it slightly ajar. As Elijah pushed it open, the hinges creaked, a sound that would later be captured in the background of Mark's video, the first indication that justice was about to arrive. Inside, Mark was so focused on his filming that he didn't immediately notice the intrusion, giving Elijah precious seconds to assess the situation and formulate a plan that would soon turn a story of cruelty into one of unexpected rescue and redemption. Mark's camera captured the moment his living room door swung open. Though he remained oblivious for several crucial seconds, the puppy in his grip whimpered again, golden fur bristling with fear as Mark's fingers tightened on his scruff. "Just one more take," Mark muttered, adjusting the tripod with his free hand. "We need to make this look convincing enough to go viral, but not enough to get reported." Elijah assessed the scene with the tactical precision of his military training. Ring lights illuminating a makeshift studio, the trembling puppy suspended in mid-air, and multiple recording devices capturing the torment. His blood ran cold when he spotted the script on the coffee table. Pretend to hurt puppy, fake rescue, gain sympathy followers. This wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. It was calculated cruelty, designed for profit. The sound of Elijah clearing his throat shattered the silence, causing Mark to spin around, eyes widening in shock and alarm. "How did you get in here?" he demanded, instinctively lowering the puppy, but not releasing his grip. The golden retriever's eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Elijah's as if recognizing a potential savior in this stranger who had appeared like an answer to unspoken prayers. "Put the dog down," Elijah commanded, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed in crisis situations. His stance widened slightly, hands open at his sides, ready to act if necessary. The morning sunlight streaming through the blinds cast lines across his face, highlighting the righteous anger in his expression. Mark's face cycled through emotions, surprise, fear, then defiance as he realized the implications of being caught. "This is private property, man. You're trespassing," he countered, taking a step back while still clutching the puppy. "This isn't what it looks like. I'm filming a rescue video showing how bad some people treat animals before they get saved." Elijah's gaze moved from Mark to the equipment, then back to the puppy whose small body continued to tremble. "Your door was open, and I heard a dog in distress," he replied evenly, taking a measured step forward. "And that script I see says otherwise. You're planning to fake abuse for views." The former Marine's eyes hardened as he added, "That's not how you treat a living creature." Outside, a neighbor walking her dog paused, hearing raised voices from the house that had always seemed so quiet. Mrs. Rodriguez, a retired teacher who missed nothing on Maple Drive, hesitated by the mailbox, debating whether to continue her morning walk or investigate the unusual commotion coming from behind the partially opened door of the beige house. Inside, the confrontation escalated as Mark's desperation grew. "You don't understand how hard it is to get noticed online," he said, his voice rising in pitch. "Everyone's doing extreme content. This isn't even real abuse, just a simulation for the video." His grip on the puppy tightened reflexively, causing another pained yelp that cut through his justifications like a knife. That sound, the genuine distress of the innocent puppy, was the final trigger for Elijah, who crossed the room in 3 swift strides. "This isn't content, it's cruelty," he stated flatly, reaching for the puppy with hands that had once disarmed explosives in war zones but now moved with gentle precision toward the frightened animal. "And your phone is still recording everything." Mark glanced at his smartphone on the tripod, suddenly realizing that his own equipment was documenting this intrusion and his admissions. In a panic, he attempted to reach the device with his free hand while maintaining his grip on the puppy. "Get out of my house!" he shouted, voice cracking with the knowledge that he was losing control of the situation. The golden retriever puppy, sensing the tension and seeing an opportunity, began squirming more vigorously in Mark's grip. His small paws paddled the air as if swimming towards safety, toward the stranger whose calm voice and steady hands promised protection. For the first time since being brought to this house, the puppy's instincts told him that rescue was possible. What happened next would later be described by Mrs. Rodriguez, who had decided to approach the house after hearing the shouting, as like something from an action movie, but with a heart. Elijah, seeing the puppy's distress intensify and Mark's growing agitation, made his decision. In one fluid motion, he stepped forward, secured the puppy with his left hand, and with his right, calmly but firmly removed the phone from the tripod. "I'm taking this evidence and this dog," Elijah stated, his voice leaving no room for argument as he cradled the now freed puppy against his chest. The small creature immediately stopped struggling, instead pressing as close as possible to his rescuer's heartbeat. "You have two choices. Try to stop me and face what happens next, or let me walk out of here while you reconsider your life choices." Mark, his face contorted with rage and panic, lunged forward. Not for the puppy, but for his phone containing the damning evidence. "Give me my property," he demanded, reaching for Elijah's hand that held the still recording device. His priority revealed everything about his character. Even now, his concern was for his content, not the living being he had been tormenting. Elijah sidestepped the lunge with the practiced ease of combat training, maintaining his protective hold on the puppy while keeping the phone out of reach. "Every second of this is still being recorded," he reminded Mark, whose eyes widened at the realization. The standoff lasted only moments before Mark backed away, his face a mask of conflicting emotions, anger, fear, and the dawning comprehension that his actions had consequences beyond his control. Cradling the golden puppy against his chest with one arm, Elijah backed toward the door, Mark's phone still gripped in his other hand. The device continued recording, capturing Mark's face as it cycled through expressions of rage, panic, and calculation. Outside, Mrs. Rodriguez stood frozen on the front step, her morning walk forgotten, as she witnessed Elijah emerging from the house with a trembling puppy and a determined expression. "Call the police," Elijah told her calmly, never taking his eyes off the doorway where Mark hovered, uncertain whether to pursue or retreat. The puppy, sensing safety for the first time in days, had stopped trembling and instead pressed his small body against Elijah's chest, golden fur catching the morning sunlight as his tiny heart raced against his rescuer's steady pulse. Mrs. Rodriguez, a woman who had taught fifth graders for 30 years before retiring, recognized authority when she heard it. She pulled her cell phone from her pocket with hands that didn't shake despite her 72 years and dialed 911. "There's a situation at 1487 Maple Drive," she reported clearly, her teacher's voice carrying across the front yard. "A man has rescued a puppy from abuse, and we need police assistance immediately." Inside the house, Mark's survival instincts finally overrode his desire for content and fame. He slammed the door shut and locked it, cutting himself off from the witnesses outside. Through the window, Elijah could see him frantically gathering equipment, presumably to hide evidence of what had been happening before the police arrived. The golden retriever puppy, now free from immediate danger, raised his head slightly to look at his rescuer. Those eyes, amber pools of pure trust and gratitude, met Elijah's, and in that moment something profound passed between them. This wasn't just a rescue. It was the beginning of a bond that would change both their lives forever. Mrs. Rodriguez approached cautiously, her morning walk companion, a grey-muzzled beagle named Charlie, sniffing curiously at the air. "Is the little one okay?" she asked, her voice soft with concern as she reached out a weathered hand to gently stroke the puppy's head. Her touch was tender, maternal, a stark contrast to the handling the puppy had experienced in the beige house. "He's scared, but I don't think there's any permanent physical damage," Elijah replied, his military training allowing him to perform a quick assessment while maintaining vigilance on the house. The puppy's golden fur was matted in places, and he was clearly underweight, but his eyes were clear and alert. It looks like the abuse was just beginning when I intervened. Neighbors began emerging from surrounding houses, drawn by the commotion, and Mrs. Rodriguez's clear voice as she reported the situation to emergency services. Mark's beige house, previously unremarkable, now stood out on Maple Drive as the focus of growing community attention and concern. The street that had been peaceful just minutes earlier now buzzed with the energy of shared outrage and protectiveness. The puppy, overwhelmed by the growing crowd and voices, burrowed deeper against Elijah's chest, seeking the safety and warmth he had found there. His small body still trembled occasionally, but his breathing had steadied, and his eyes, when they opened, sought only Elijah's face, imprinting on the man who had changed his fate with a single act of intervention. The sound of approaching sirens cut through the morning air, growing louder as Portland police responded to Mrs. Rodriguez's call. Elijah stood his ground, the puppy secure in his arms, Mark's phone still recording in his hand, capturing not just evidence of the almost abuse, but also the aftermath, the community response, and most importantly, the golden retriever's journey from object to individual. 2 police cruisers, pulled up within minutes of each other, followed closely by an animal control van. Officers emerged with the caution of those responding to an unknown situation, hands near their weapons, but not drawing them. Officer Sarah Chen approached Elijah first, her experienced eyes taking in the scene, the puppy, the phone, the locked house, and the gathering neighbors. "I'm Officer Chen," she introduced herself, voice professional but kind. "Can you tell me what's happening here?" Her gaze moved from Elijah to the puppy and back, assessing both the man and the animal he protected. Behind her, her partner, Officer Marcus Rodriguez, no relation to Mrs. Rodriguez, though they would later joke about it, approached the house with measured steps. Elijah presented the phone first, its screen still showing the active recording. "I was jogging by and heard a puppy in distress," he explained, his voice steady and clear. "Through the window I saw this man, Mark Donovan, filming himself mistreating this puppy for social media content. The door was ajar, so I entered and intervened." Officer Chen took the phone carefully, preserving the evidence chain as she tapped the screen to stop the recording. With professional efficiency, she scrolled back through the video, her expression hardening as she witnessed the moments before Elijah's intervention. "This is clearly animal abuse," she confirmed, looking up at the house where Officer Rodriguez now stood at the door, knocking firmly. "Police, open up!" Officer Rodriguez called, his deep voice carrying the full authority of his position. Inside, shadows moved across the blinds as Mark presumably weighed his options. The moment stretched, tension building, until finally, the lock clicked and the door opened to reveal Mark, his expression now carefully composed into a mask of confused innocence. "Officers, this is a misunderstanding," Mark began, his voice taking on a reasonable tone that contrasted sharply with his earlier rage. "I'm a content creator working on a video about animal rescue. That man," he pointed at Elijah, "broke into my home and stole my property, both my phone and the puppy I was caring for." Officer Chen's expression remained impassive as she held up the phone, its screen now displaying a paused image of Mark holding the puppy by the scruff. "Mr. Donovan, we have video evidence that contradicts your statement," she stated calmly. "And we have a witness who heard the puppy in distress and your statements about creating content through animal mistreatment." Mark's carefully constructed mask began to crack as he realized the depth of his predicament. "That's taken out of context," he protested, his voice rising slightly as Officer Rodriguez moved to stand beside him, a silent but unmistakable restriction of his movement options. "I was acting. It was all for a social awareness campaign." While the officers dealt with Mark, Elijah focused entirely on the puppy in his arms. The golden retriever had stopped trembling and now lay against his chest, eyes half closed in the first relaxation he had experienced since arriving at the beige house. A small pink tongue darted out occasionally to lick Elijah's hand, as if confirming that this safety was real and not just another frightening transition. Animal Control Officer Jessie Winters approached with gentle steps, her gaze fixed on the puppy. "I need to check him over," she explained softly to Elijah, who nodded but didn't immediately relinquish his hold. "We'll need to take him to the shelter for a full examination, but I can do a preliminary assessment here." The puppy's eyes flew open at the unfamiliar voice, his body tensing momentarily before Elijah's steady hand stroked his back in reassurance. "It's okay, little one," he murmured. The words meant only for the puppy's ears. "She's here to help you." As if understanding, the golden retriever relaxed slightly, though his eyes remained fixed on Elijah's face. Officer Winters knelt beside them, her experienced hands moving with practiced care as she checked the puppy's eyes, ears, gums, and limbs. "He's malnourished and dehydrated," she reported, her professional tone not quite masking her anger at the puppy's condition. "But I don't see signs of broken bones or serious injury. You intervened in time." Behind them, Mark was being read his rights by Officer Rodriguez, the formal language of arrest cutting through his continued protests. "Mark Donovan, you are under arrest for animal cruelty and criminal mistreatment of animals," the officer stated clearly, securing Mark's wrists behind his back with handcuffs that clicked with finality. Neighbors had gathered in a loose semicircle, witnessing justice in action, many recording on their phones, the irony not lost on anyone that the man who had sought viral fame was now achieving it in the worst possible way. Mrs. Rodriguez stood at the front of the group, her beagle Charlie sitting obediently at her feet, both watching the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. "I want to adopt him," Elijah said suddenly to Officer Winters, the decision crystallizing in his mind with absolute certainty. The puppy's eyes were still fixed on his face, that unspoken connection between them growing stronger with each passing moment. "I know there's a process, but I want to start it right away." Officer Winters nodded, unsurprised. "I've seen this before," she acknowledged, a small smile softening her professional demeanor. "Rescue bonds are powerful. We'll still need to take him to the shelter for medical care and processing, but I can give you the adoption paperwork today." As Mark was escorted to the police cruiser, his pleas for understanding falling on deaf ears, Elijah finally surrendered the puppy to Officer Winters' gentle hands. "I'll see you soon," he promised the golden retriever, whose eyes tracked him even as he was placed in a carrier. "You're safe now, and I'll be there as soon as they let me." The following days passed in a blur of paperwork, statements, and visits to the Portland Animal Shelter, where the puppy, now officially named Hope by shelter staff, was receiving treatment for malnutrition and psychological trauma. Elijah visited daily, bringing approved toys and treats, sitting for hours beside the kennel where Hope recuperated, reading aloud from books while the puppy listened with pricked ears. Social media, the very platform Mark had sought to exploit, became the instrument of both justice and healing, as the video evidence went viral for entirely different reasons. Animal rights organizations shared the footage of Hope's rescue, careful to edit out the most distressing moments while highlighting Elijah's intervention and the community's response, creating awareness about content creator exploitation of animals. 1 week after the rescue, Elijah sat in the shelter's meet and greet room, waiting for the final paperwork that would make Hope officially his. The golden retriever puppy, already looking healthier with a glossy coat and bright eyes, sat attentively at his feet, no longer the terrified creature from the beige house on Maple Drive. When Dr. Peterson, the shelter veterinarian, entered with the adoption forms, Hope's tail wagged with new confidence. "He's made a remarkable recovery," Dr. Peterson observed, smiling as she handed Elijah a pen. "Physically, he's gaining weight appropriately, and psychologically, well, I've rarely seen a puppy bounce back so quickly from trauma." She knelt to scratch behind Hope's ears, receiving an enthusiastic lick on her hand in return. "I think he knows exactly who saved him." Meanwhile, across town in the county courthouse, Mark Donovan stood before Judge Miranda Holbrook, his attorney beside him as the charges were read aloud. 1 count of animal cruelty, 1 count of criminal mistreatment of animals, the court clerk announced, her voice echoing in the hushed courtroom where animal rights activists and community members filled the gallery. The prosecutor presented the evidence methodically, the video from Mark's phone showing the intentional mistreatment, the script outlining his plans for fake abuse content, and statements from witnesses including Mrs. Rodriguez and Elijah. Most damning was Mark's own voice on the recording, discussing how to make the puppy look scared for views and followers. Judge Holbrook, known for her no-nonsense approach to animal cruelty cases, watched the evidence presentation with a deepening frown, occasionally glancing at Mark, whose eyes remained fixed on the floor. When the prosecutor finished, she removed her glasses and fixed Mark with a penetrating stare. "Donovan, do you understand the severity of what you've done? Mark's attorney had advised him to show remorse, to apologize and claim temporary poor judgment, but the strategy fell flat under the judge's scrutiny. "Your Honor, my client was misguided in his pursuit of social media fame," the attorney began, but Judge Holbrook raised her hand to silence him. "Mr. Donovan, in my courtroom, animals are not props for entertainment," she stated firmly, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. "They are living beings deserving of care and respect. Your calculated cruelty for personal gain represents the worst kind of exploitation." The sentence, when it came, sent a clear message. 6 months in county jail, 3 years probation, permanent restriction from owning or working with animals, and mandatory psychological counseling. As the bailiff led Mark away, the gallery erupted in applause, a rare occurrence in Judge Holbrook's courtroom that she allowed to continue for several moments before calling for order. Back at the shelter, unaware of the proceedings that had just concluded, Elijah signed the final adoption paper with a steady hand. "That's it," Dr. Peterson announced, smiling as she stamped the document. "Hope is officially yours." At the sound of his new name, the golden retriever's ears perked up, his amber eyes fixed on Elijah with absolute trust. As they walked out into the bright Portland afternoon, Hope trotting confidently beside his new owner on a blue leash, neither man nor dog looked back. The beige house on Maple Drive was already fading from Hope's memory, replaced by new experiences. The feel of grass under his paws in Elijah's backyard, the taste of proper puppy food in a clean bowl, the sound of his name spoken with love instead of calculation. This story, like so many involving animal rescue, reminds us of the profound difference one person can make by simply refusing to look away from suffering. Elijah Washington didn't set out to be a hero that Tuesday morning. He was just a man taking his usual jog through a familiar neighborhood. But when the moment came to act, he didn't hesitate. Hope's story went viral, not as Mark had intended, but as a testament to intervention, compassion, and justice. The video of his rescue, edited to focus on his recovery rather than his mistreatment, inspired donations to animal shelters across the country and sparked conversations about the ethical responsibilities of content creators. Today, Hope is 2 years old, a healthy, happy golden retriever who visits local schools with Elijah as part of a program teaching children about animal care and kindness. His amber eyes, once clouded with fear, now shine with joy as small hands gently stroke his golden fur. He no longer flinches at sudden movements or loud noises. Those memories have been replaced by thousands of moments of genuine love and respect. The next time you see something that doesn't seem right, an animal in distress, a situation that makes your instincts sound an alarm, remember Hope's story. Remember that in that crucial moment, the choice to act or to walk away can change everything. For one golden retriever puppy, that choice meant the difference between a life of fear and exploitation and one of love and safety. Sometimes, the greatest acts of heroism aren't grand gestures, but simple moments of moral clarity. A person recognizing suffering and refusing to let it continue. In a world that can sometimes seem indifferent to cruelty, Hope's story reminds us that compassion, when acted upon, has the power to transform lives, both human and animal, in ways we might never have imagined.